All right, tonight we've got a special one coming up here. We've got Clint, our favorite listener recommendation guy, with us to help out with this one. And we've got Stephen and Evan Strong. They are authors, researchers of progressive archaeohistorians, speakers. They've been doing presentations and they've written a few books. Really, really fascinating research, kind of stuff we've talked about on the show before about ancient histories and alternative history and mysteries and sacred artifacts and all kinds of stuff. So welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for asking us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So we were just chit-chatting a little bit before, and Clint was mentioning, he's going to have some questions for you guys about some specific stuff. But like, you guys have so much content, like 6 books, lots of presentations, lots of, pictures, and I think we should really bring in this whole thing into context. Like Clint was mentioning. So maybe we could start sort of the overarching theory about all the stuff you guys are researching and where that kind of differs from the slowly changing mainstream scientific paradigm.
Slowly changing. You must be doing well where you are, because in Australia it doesn't change at all. But basically, what we're on about is that we believe humanity came into being much, much further back than what they claim. We believe there is a double ancestry, part terrestrial, part extraterrestrial, and where that took place.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it began in Australia. So we've called it the out of Australia theory, but that sort of sells it short, because it's not just about the fact it's out of Australia, it's the fact that it's also out of this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another part of it. And it's sort of interesting, isn't it? Because in our first 4 books, we never mentioned the UFO story, never went near it, didn't touch it. And I remember when one of my elders, when I was given ceremony, told me we would talk about this, I said, we are not going to go down the Von Däniken way, did we, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that we didn't believe in it, we just didn't want all of that, baggage and hassle comes with it. And look where we are now.
And so it was something we're not as if we came into this story pushing that crusade. It's because the elders that we work with all over the country gave us no option. So that part of the story about the Pleiadians coming and the cross-fertilization of genes is not our theory, it's their fact. And of course, a lot of people don't listen to Indigenous people and ignore them and think, it's a legend, it's a myth.
A fairy tale.
A fairy tale, yeah. Well, no, what we've done is we've found the proof, but primarily it's a theory about humanity's conception, and it's also a theory about humanity's role and its place on this planet, which has been stolen and hidden. So it's more than just out of Australia. It's more like waking back up to where we came from and where we should be going.
And do you think our role as humans were maybe perhaps caretakers of the planet? Or do they believe that perhaps?
Absolutely. This is what our role was. We were caretakers of the planet, not better than other animals, but had a special role. I mean, you've got to remember something, ladies and gentlemen. If you look at the skull of a Homo Neanderthal, Denisovan, and Homo sapien, you'll find the smallest skull is Homo sapien. The other 2 skulls are larger and have a larger brain capacity than us. We are not. We're given the name of Homo sapiens sapien, which is wise twice. That's not what our role was. We have 2 roles. First of all, of those 3 beings, I suspect we had the potential to be the most spiritual. And secondly, when the others crossbred with us, we were given the role as custodians, not owners, but custodians of this planet and all that is found within it. And I think we failed on both levels.
We're probably a bit insecure needing to use the word wise twice.
Yes, it is interesting. I mean, only humans would say, no, we're wise, we're wise. No, once would have done it, guys. Twice gives me an indication that you've got an insecurity and unsure about our role.
They should change. They should change one of the sapiens to like Domesticus.
Sapien domesticus.
Yeah, I think that would fit a lot closer. So, yeah, that's basically where we're coming from. We're trying to talk about an ancestry that begins in Australia that is spread throughout the planet.
Does it seem to fit in with we had another guest on, Bruce Fenton, and the last time we had him on, he was with his wife, Daniela Fenton, and they were talking about, he had the into Africa theory, which I think was sort of matches, I think, with yours, at least at a high level. And then Daniela was writing that book, what was it called again? Hybrid Humans and Ancient Aliens. I don't remember what the book title was. Hybrid Humans: Scientific Evidence of Our 800,000-Year-Old Alien Legacy. And it seems to, I thought, from what I've watched of your YouTube videos and stuff like that, it seems to fit in with that as well, that it may go that far back to around 800,000 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Are you guys familiar with the work?
Well, yeah, because they worked for a while very early on the piece, didn't they? Yeah, we know exactly what they're doing, but there is no difference. When we talk about into Africa, people need to understand a couple of things about Africans and Aboriginal people. And the first one that's very important is the Africans have 6 genome patterns. The original people have 34, but they're wrong. There's more. We've got 3 with us right now. It's much more than 34. Secondly, African people have no relationship nor genetics in them that's Neanderthal or Denisovan. Original people have up to 6% Denisovan DNA, and we also have Neanderthal, and we also have another species they still haven't identified.
They call it unknown.
They call it unknown, yeah. So look at the two. If you want to look at it, it has to be into Africa, because Africa just wasn't first.
And then there's new hominids that were found in Bulgaria and Greece as well.
Well, there's hominids that have been found around the world. There's one found in Siberia, which is just on nearly 10 million years old. And then you go to Bulgaria and Greece and you'll find them around 7.4 and 7.2 million years old. Go to Africa and your earliest hominin is around about 5 million years old. Yet they tell us the hominids come out of Africa. No, they don't. And when it comes to Homo sapiens and you talk about like the Denisovans and Neanderthal, and they said, oh, we came into being 200,000 years ago. They've got Neanderthal and Denisovans walking around in European plains 740,000 years ago, before the split. It's not Africa. Africa is a place where people, as Bruce said, went into and came from other places. And that's what really we've got to start getting our heads around. The whole of the theories are wrong.
You know what's interesting? Sorry to interrupt. You know what's interesting is I was actually just reading a book last night to my daughters about dogs and ancient dogs, and there's only 2 or 3 species of basically dog in the world that aren't related to the canine family. One of them's a rodent, but the other 2 are both in Australia.
Yes, that's quite true. In fact, it's interesting because I can tell you what happened with that. They did a mitochondrial DNA study of the dingo to find where it came from, because I was sure it came from India.
Yes,
India definitely came from India. 5,000 years ago, it just popped in. The Indians didn't come. The dog came on its own. That was their theory.
Good swimmer.
Yeah, great swimmer. And what they found out in Sydney Uni, one of our most esteemed universities, equivalent to, say, Harvard, was that the mitochondrial DNA of the dingo doesn't belong to any dog, any wolf, anywhere in the world. And they've given the name of a new species. Well, what's fascinating, gentlemen, is after that, no further study was done. They just left it, didn't they? They walked away and said, well, there you go. Yeah. It didn't come from anywhere. We thought it came here 5,000 years ago, but it's not related to any other dog or anything in the world.
Mystery solved.
Let's never talk about that.
No, they've given it a new name, and it's not wolf and it's not dog. Like you said, that's very correct in what you're reading to your daughter. Spot on, it's true. And of course, the dingo is interesting in other ways because it doesn't bark. And for original people, it was given the same status as a human. People may not know this, but in many, many camps, the dingoes would camp with the humans and they would hunt together. And equally, if a woman lost a child early on in the piece, often she would be given a dingo pup to suckle and breastfeed. And I've read stories of white fellas who are being breastfed by an Aboriginal woman, who had to wait for the dingo pup first so they get their chance as a baby to feed off the mother. So they had a completely different relationship with the dingo. I mean, it was against the law to hit a dingo or a child. In fact, the laws for dingoes and humans are primarily the same. So, yes, it's a fascinating story, and you've got to ask yourself if it doesn't belong to anywhere else in the world, but supposedly came here 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. My question to the academics is, well, if that's your theory, tell me where it came from. Yeah. And they don't have an answer.
So for people that aren't sure of the terminology, what do you mean by original then? Is that original as in originally and that are in Australia right now still? Or are they in other parts of the world like South America as well? Or what, can you expand on that a little bit so people understand the difference?
Well, we use the word original because the word Aboriginal is kind of actually a negative term.
I found out about that by mistake.
You were worse than Aboriginal, buddy. We're not going to repeat what you said.
As the term, the Aboriginal people here are the first people that people refer to as Aboriginal. That's what they prefer to be called. It's what we prefer to be called too, because I'm Original too.
But as for where they are, well,
they were the first people, so that's why they want that term, because, I mean, even the textbooks will tell you the oldest culture in the world comes from Australia. They don't know the oldest people do, but they are the original people, and that's how they wish to be called, and that's how a lot of people now call them. I call myself that, and no one gets offended by the term. Oh, well, some politically active Original people do get offended by the term Aboriginal. It's just a term that's been used a lot of places, but Aboriginal just means, it's another word that means Indigenous. It actually doesn't give you anything other than the fact that it's people that live on land. It doesn't specify it as being anywhere. So Original are Australian, Aboriginal people or Indigenous people.
And almost, well, you could almost say world, because we know that they were found in North and South America as well.
Yeah.
I think I thought up until recently the last group were in Terra de Fuga. But to the early 2000s, I think the last 3 women for that population.
That's right, yeah.
But in saying that, they've now found in the depths of the Amazon 2 of the most remote tribes there.
The Tupu and the Gi. Yeah, there was a study that was done by David Wright from a small university called Harvard and 6 other universities over 3 years. And what they did was they looked at the 2 people called the Tupu and Gi people in the depths of the Amazon and chose them because they did not marry with anyone but themselves. They kept their bloodline and genetic line pure. And they figured if we study these people, we'll find out where the American Indians came from. But what they didn't know is there's been 2 migrations in there. What they found was, and I remember they said something like, we tried so hard to make the results go away, and every time it got better, stronger and stronger, was the closest genetic links to the Tupu and Gi people were the Papua New Guineans, the Australian people, and the people from Andaman Island, who are also Original. And they have said now that the ancestry is that in fact, David Wright said he was adamant. There was one group that came in 12,000 years ago. He said, well, they didn't. There was a group that came in earlier, and they are the original people. The original people were living in America, both sides, for hundreds of thousands of years. And the genes are still there. But it's just that what we think happened was the Parakew in Baja, California. You've got the people from Lake Titicaca.
Titicaca.
That's another group, the Euro people. And the ones in Tierra del Fuego. The problem is there were small groups, but what we think happened was they hit genetic cul-de-sacs and they just died out genetically because they couldn't sort of share their genes with other tribes because they were gone. And we don't think, because some of our work on this was put up by the Ku Klux Klan, wasn't it?
Oh, go on.
We want to make this clear to the Ku Klux Klan. We never said there was warfare between the second group of American Indian people who came in and the first group. We don't believe there was, simply because the Parakew people were living in Baja, California, and were very strong when the Spanish got there, and they wrote about them. They said they had boomerangs just like ours, and they were enormously black. They were naked. They were original people. In fact, Pen on Woman that one of those people has been seen, and they said is original. There were hundreds of them then. The problem is, I think they just hit genetic cul-de-sacs, not warfare, Ku Klux Klan, not invasion. The two groups lived together for an incredibly long period of time, bearing in mind the second group of American Indian people came in around 12,000 years ago, and they were still there. And the Euro people, they lived on the rafts, didn't they, on the lake?
Yep.
And they kept away from them. They just said, look, you just live your way and we'll live ours. So if I can just clarify that to any people from the far right, we never said there was warfare between the two groups. In fact, we said the opposite. It's called genetics. If you can't share your genetics and you start inbreeding, you do lead to infertility. And that's what we think happened there.
And it's happened in other places too. I know.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we do. Yeah. Yeah.
We have a photo of one of the full descent Ainu from the late 1800s.
Oh, yeah. He looks...
We've thrown that photo up around Australia and tried to get people to guess, what tribal nation do you think this fellow comes from? They're always saying, oh, yeah, my neighbouring group out in the desert. No, Japan.
Yeah, the Ainu people are also original people are kept separate. And you'll find also in India, they did a genetic survey, I think 2 years ago. Dr. Rao ran it. And what they found was of the 920 people they surveyed in the southern part of India, they found 7 people that had only original genetics. There was no Indian genetics at all. So you'll find vestiges of the original people all over the world when they went out a long period of time ago, way back. Way back.
Like 50,000 years ago, way back?
Well, even further. Look, we're of the opinion that it happened 75,000 years ago when they claimed the Africans came out of Africa and wandered all over the place. Now, the reason we say that is because 75,000 years ago was the biggest volcanic eruption for the last 2 million years. And to give you an idea of its impact, Vesuvius, when it erupted, there was 10 centimetres of ash. When this one erupted in Indonesia, there was 3 metres of ash found in India and 1 metre found in Greenland.
Yeah. Wow.
This was a huge eruption, and they claim, esteemed archaeologist Josephine Flood, others claim that the human population dropped down to between 5,000 to 10,000 people.
So you had one group in Southern Africa.
Yeah, and one up in Sweden,
Europe.
yeah, that sort of area, and the rest were wiped out. But I've got to make a point. There is one place in the world the ash never landed on, and it was Australia, because the winds took it in different directions and Australia escaped all of it. My understanding is, because there's plenty of proof that there was someone wandering around that they said was African that became Australian, and it was the other way around. If you want to go and settle other places, don't go there when there's lots and lots of people. Go there when there's only 5,000 to 10,000 people in the old world, and you won't get a lot of, let's say, aggression and arguments, because there's virtually no one left. And we believe that's when the original people wandered around the world and went out then when the timing was right and when the world had been basically depopulated. And that was the time to repopulate. And you'll find original genes are now being found in all European people. The oldest original skull found in Australia and body is Lake Mungo 3, and it's 65,000 years old, and they have now detected European genes within the genes of that person. So if you want to know where Europeans and Caucasians came from, we now know we have Caucasian genes in an original person 20,000 years before Europeans come into existence. So that part's easy. So we know that's there. And we know that they were spread all over the world. So it was simply a matter of grab the time that's best, and we're guessing, when no original person has said, oh, it was 73,200 years. No. Haven't got that. But it seems to me, because there's so much evidence of original people wandering in that area around 65, 70,000 years, it seems to me 75 would be the right time to go, because there's no one else left.
Wow.
If we can just zoom back to the inbreeding and the infertility and stuff, he got me thinking on Easter Island, and they found a language there. What was it? The Rungo. I'm not sure which language it is, but they believe that that language was worldwide too. I wonder if the Easter Island population fell to their doom due to the infertility and all that too.
Well, one thing I'll say to that right away is that I personally think that there's an undeniable link between Göbekli Tepe and Easter Island.
Right,
oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're right, too, about the inbreeding on Easter Island. I think that's what's happened in a lot of places.
And there are symbols in Grimerica Tepe that are, I've seen painted on...
body painting for original people. Yeah, same symbols.
Symbol.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a global language of symbols and script here
that goes around the world. And I mean, even in the Bible, it may be symbolic, but they talk about the Tower of Babel and the fact that everyone got different languages. Well, that part, even though it's not actually a temple as such, what they're saying is right. And what then took place is that once people can't communicate to one another, then you start to get mistrust, you start to get suspicion, and that leads
to a huge loss of information when you don't understand what other people are talking. There's such a huge loss of information between all the languages.
Oh, man.
Exactly.
You go into the French, you go into the German, you go into all those books, and you can't read them, but there's massive information in there that could really work with stuff.
Yeah.
Man, you can barely speak English to another human being and get, I mean, what do you think you're getting? Like 80% of the same message delivered when you're speaking the same language?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then what do you think? So where does that put? So that the second influx of Indians into the Americas is then right around, right before the Younger Dryas?
Well, we think the second influx was at Clovis time, around 12,000 years. We're not sure whether they came from France or from the top end over around through Alaska and the top ridge there. I'm not sure which because there's theories on both. But it's very important to understand. My understanding was that the second group that came in lived exactly in the precepts of the dreaming that the original people had in that country to begin with. And that's why I keep saying, why would there be a war if the second group came? And when you look at the Hopi, and you'd swear if you read what they've got to say, it is so original and so much a part of our culture that we actually have a place in Australia that is sacred to the Hopi people. And they do ceremony there. It's called White Buffalo Mountain. We believe there was a link. In fact, if you listen to the Hopi legend, they'll talk about a southern continent, won't they?
Yeah.
The place they came from. So we have no doubt that the second group that came in, because they lived a hunter-gatherer, no-dig farming society, they basically lived exactly the same way the original people lived. So we feel there was a harmonious blending of another group that came in to a beautiful land, South and North America together, and they also took up residence and were welcomed. And that's why we believe that if you look at Lakota and you look at the Hopi and what they've got to say, there's virtually nothing that contradicts with our belief in the dreaming and our philosophies and what original law is. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that was done by choice and by design.
How does the Clovis fit into all that then?
Well, that's just the next group coming and also bringing with them slightly different forms of technology and also making sure that wherever they live, whether it was in South America or North America, and I know they spread through the whole of the continents there, that when you look at the Olmec traditions of the wide-nosed people, and they say, oh, they're African. No, they're original. They're original. Our people have wide noses too. There's not the only mob, the Africans that have that. And they kept that tradition. They kept that tradition going. So from our point of view, the American Indian people are, for all intents and purposes, living exactly in the way that we were supposed to live until, as you know, there was an invasion there, as there was in Australia. Yours was earlier than ours.
Manifest destiny, baby.
Sorry.
Well, I feel I was going to say something about the Younger Dryas too, because I feel like if they said 12,000 years ago and they came back in to North America, probably after the floods.
Yeah,
like,
I was going to tie that next thing into if they thought we've had Randall Carlson on the show several times here. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. I assume you would be. But do you think that second coming in is that sort of a repopulation after the southern half of the world was wiped out?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you look at the rules here, if you look at anything, you will find that even the archaeologists will tell you around 10 to 12,000 years ago, the world's population dropped by 90%, but they won't say what happened. It's obvious there was some sort of cataclysm. Even the original people have a story about a flood. It's in our dreaming. It's in the dreaming stories of every culture around the world. And yes, I think that is exactly what drove these people to another place. They would have been maybe the ones that got in a decent boat. I'm not dismissing. See, people seem to think that the boats are, they're quite recent. No, they're not. I believe, even their theories about coming to Africa, from Africa to Australia, you have to sail over 100 kilometres of ocean to get there. So even under their theories, if you can sail 100 k's across the ocean, you can sail the oceans. And they're saying 60,000 years ago those boats were around. So even if I rely on them, why can't? There's a lot of people who feel they sailed from France.
As well.
I think they could have sailed there. In fact, if you go to South America, they talk about the fact that their people sailed to that country.
But sailed in a different way than I would have thought. I would have thought island hopping, but they talk about a southern route.
Yeah.
Skirting along the edge of Antarctica and coming up that way.
Riding the winds.
The fish and marine life down there, and they use that to get across to Chile. In fact, in the schools there, they teach an origin story from Australia.
In Chile, all the children are taught that the original people came from Australia to settle their land.
You can look at a lot of art that looks exactly the same.
And I think you'll find that the flood and the massive conflagration and the changing of so much of your land, you can just imagine the people living on the coast when all of a sudden it just all disappeared. What are they going to do? And it's not that easy, particularly if you take Australia. If you're living on the coast and your land is gone, you can't go inland because somebody already owns that land. You've got to think about that. The reason why people probably left and sailed to America is because in a lot of those areas, once they lost their land, you can't just walk inland when there's another group that's living there. You can have wars and all sorts of stuff, and you may not want to do that. And at that particular time, I don't believe people were that warlike. So therefore, what do? You go somewhere new where there's plenty of room to take your people, and I think that's what happened.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it fits in
for sure.
I think the coast would have been probably, some sort of weird, gross, half used to be forest and, whatever sort of latrine system you had is, I'd like the coast would have turned into something pretty gross for a couple 100 years. I would think you wouldn't want to be too close to that anyway.
Hospitable.
And if you've adapted a lifestyle around a coast where you've got trees and you've got all this stuff and it all becomes salty and all sorts of stuff like that, all your hunter-gathering techniques are based around a place that doesn't exist. What do? You can still fish, but all the other things have gone. So that's when I think people thought, well, we can't use our skills anymore here. We'll have to go somewhere else. And I believe, and in fact, I know, it was a global population and they would have known where they were sailing to. They didn't just sail off into the distance and hope they found somewhere. They would have known it was there.
I'll just sail off in a northwards direction. And it's absurd. Yeah.
They would have been scared of falling off.
Well, you take the out of Africa theory. Their belief is that what happened was that the very first Africans, they wandered through the whole of Asia and the Middle East just after, around 75,000 years ago, just after Mount Toba erupted, and nobody's there. And they didn't settle anywhere. They walked through all of it, went through the whole of Asia, didn't like any of it, then got down to somewhere near Indonesia and then looked off into the distance and saw nothing. Because you've got to sail at least 100 k's at any stage, even during the ice ages, to get to Australia. And got a group of people to get on the boat, because you've got to have a group of people or you'll get inbreeding. It can't be 2 or 3. It's got to be over 20. And then decided, let's go that way where there's nothing, when behind us there's everything and virtually no one there. That is how this theory is supposed to start. And from our point of view, the very base of that theory just doesn't make sense. In fact, it's illogical. And I'm going to use, and I've used this a few times, haven't I? Can I use one of your great philosophers of the 20th and 21st century, Judge Judy? She made a point about this. And she said, if it doesn't make sense, it must be a lie. And that's what we think. We're just backing up her belief on that this is a lie.
So
They didn't just stand on the coast and look and say, there's nothing there, let's go that way. They were already in this place going the other way because they knew what was there too.
So do you think it's a lie like by design, or a lie of, you know, the common, you know, archaeologists not wanting to be wrong, trying to protect their own work, or, is it an overarching cover up, or is it just general human fuckery?
I was kind of going to say that too, because it takes people like these guys and Graham Hancock to take all the scientific pieces that are already out there that they don't want to put together. Like, they're just looking at a narrow view, and you guys are putting this big puzzle piece together, and we're actually, you know, getting further with that. But like Darren said, is that, you know, it's frustrating, but is it just out of ignorance, or?
I think it's both. We both think it's both. I mean, we're dealing with a skull at the moment where archaeologists have looked at it and said, I don't want to look at it. I'm going to walk away. I don't want to talk about that skull. And we've had many
the
that
new
have taken
hominid skull, is it?
Yeah. But then you've got others. I mean, you've got those ones, but they're just protecting their post, because a lot of academics feel like I wrote a theory about it out of Africa and now it's all wrong. Will I lose my posting? They're protecting their ego. And I don't believe that in that respect they're involved in the conspiracy as such. But I also know at the highest levels, they know a lot more.
Yeah.
They know more, and that they won't put out. And I believe the reason they won't put out is because they don't like the history that this would actually bring up. I mean, for example, we're of the opinion that for a very long period of time, humans were spiritual beings and they could telepathically communicate like our elders can. We've sat with an elder that disappeared in front of our eyes and did what he calls a party trick, and disappeared in front of Graham Hancock's eyes, who was there at the time when he did it. Graham saw this happen. Now, there was a time, and I've spoken to other elders about this, there was a time when that wasn't considered supernatural or paranormal. It was considered natural and normal. I don't believe that the people at the highest level who know all of this story ever want this to come out. Because I've said to many people, what would you prefer, a better flat screen TV or the ability to telepathically communicate with any being on the planet? And every one of them will say, I prefer to telepathically communicate. And I say to them, well, why don't you do it? Because you can. That's the trick. And I think what this is they've created a history. I think it's very important people understand that history. If you look at our history, it's about warfare. I'm a teacher. I've taught history, I've taught geography, and I can tell you now that when you do history, you basically do a series of conflicts. And what it does is it creates within us an underlying expectation that we are actually warlike beings, and this is naturally what humans do. And therefore, when we go to war, we don't question it because we just think, oh, well, you know, that's just the way it is and it's always been that way. And the fact that the world spends round about 40 cents in every dollar made on this planet on warfare and security, if we didn't spend it on that, there'd be no poverty. But we do because we keep thinking that's just the way we are. Well, our understanding is until about 6,000, 7,000 years ago, there wasn't this didn't happen. We had one language, there was cooperation and communication, and nobody would ever take in Australia when we do have wars, and we do have them here, you're not allowed to fight on someone's land, and when you finish, you go back to your land, and the winner can't take your land off you, can't take your history, can't take your culture. Well, once that changed, when the winners started winning, they changed the history, and they've changed it in a way now that makes us believe this is just part of the human condition.
Yeah.
Well, my take is it's not. It's been imposed. And because they make us so fearful, when you become fearful, you become defensive, and it's much easier to get a person to become aggressive once they're under those conditions where they feel like they're being attacked. So I believe there's two levels to it. There's the level of the archaeologist that just wants to save their job and their posting, but there's a more insidious level at the highest level where they're trying to hijack our ancestry and our purpose for being here.
I mean, there's also, to bring it back to insecurity, geologists versus archaeologists.
Oh, God, yeah.
There's that old battle.
Yeah, because there's so many geologists now that are giving evidence of human activity that goes into, well, in America, like Valsequillo, they had, so many numbers of 200, 400, 500, 600,000. And the only people who fought against it were the archaeologists. And what does an archaeologist do, basically? Gets a spade and digs and puts up a drip line. They really don't do a lot of science. They just think they do.
Ooh,
well, there's also,
what about anthropologists?
Sorry?
What was that?
What about anthropologists? They must fit into that somewhere as well.
Well, to an extent, but there are some very good anthropologists, and I'm not going to slag them off as much as the archaeologists. Our issue is with archaeologists in Australia, and at the moment we've got one on site. We've got a lot of geologists who are backing us quietly and giving and checking our work and making sure we're on song. That's easy, isn't it? We've got some very good geologists who won't put their name up next to us for fear of losing their reputation and everything else. But when it comes to
open-minded geologists, or what?
Yeah, we've got open lines with geologists who are backing us strongly because they know that when things are found in a strata that they know the date of, well, that's what they know. They know it's true.
That brings in the third component. Like there's the two components, the two layers that you mentioned, but the third layer is the one that you guys sort of, switched on to partly through your work is the ET part of it, whether it's Pleiadians or some other kind of, ET technology or whatever, or artifacts. Like now they're, I think that's part of it is they really just don't want us to wake up yet to that whole thing as well. And so what did you guys find, or how did you guys change gears into that whole thing? Was it a series of events, or was it something that happened that?
A series of events is a good one because look, we found, at Trina's site, we found rocks that were cut into cubes and they were 10 ton and they're made from granite. And it could have been done. It could have been done by humans. I wasn't going to question that. I left that as a 50-50, didn't we? Could have been done by humans. What I tell you, it's technology that we have trouble today. We found about 5 of those cubes, didn't we?
Yeah. Perfect
cubes cut, and there were granite and crystal inside, really strong. But to an extent, the reason that we went down this path, in our country, I'm going to have to say it's mainly Pleiadian. I know that Syrians were elsewhere in Africa and stuff like that, but we're sticking with Pleiades because that's what we were given.
It's the only.
The Hopi speak of the Pleiades too, right? So
yeah, well, we don't
have.
Well, see, for us, the reason why we've gone down this path is we're prosecuting the original truths, and there's only one tribe. We've got around about 500 tribes with 500 different languages, not one. Just like in America when you have different tribes there, but we've got a lot more. We've got around 500. And each of them have their own dances, their own ceremonies, their own stories that go to their land alone. But there is one story that belongs to every tribe in Australia without exception, where the narrative barely changes. I mean, sometimes when the 7 sisters from the Pleiades are chased by the male from Orion, sometimes he's okay.
Yep.
Sometimes he's not. Sometimes he gets one of the sisters. Sometimes he doesn't. But the general part of this is that in every case, we have the 7 sisters from Pleiades that are coming to Australia. And ladies and gentlemen, the way they put it to me was they landed here. It wasn't some sort of symbolic statement of the 7 stars going past, but there's more than 7. It was that they came to this country and selected Australia. That's how we got involved in it, because if we're going to talk their story and back it all the way along, we had no choice.
We can't ignore those patterns. There's no
No, well, not if the elders keep telling us to say it. That's the point, you see, because the elders kept saying it's time to bring this up. So if we didn't do that, I don't know that we would have got access onto the other sites we've got access onto. They might have just said, well, if you're not going to do it properly, you're going to pick and choose like all the other archaeologists, then we don't want you anymore. So it's either all or nothing, that you go all the way in and you follow it through. So that's how it started.
And that kind of that ties in with a lot of the North American Indian and the Canadian Indian and the star people. You know, we had Artie Six Killer Clark on talking about all the different star people myths and legends and stuff like that. And then I think it also would line up pretty well with, you know, the ancient Hindus and stuff like that, talking about Vimanas and that sort of thing.
Great battles in the sky, yes.
So
it did fit. Yeah,
I got a specific question for you here about the Pleiades. Was there anything? Did you find anything in all those myths and all those things about specific meanings of the Pleiades rising, like coming up over the horizon? And the reason I ask that is we were out looking for UFOs one night, and about 3 a.m, the constellation came up over the horizon, and it was pretty mind blowing seeing it that low. Like there was northern lights that night as well, which might have contributed to this, but it really looked like a blue ball of a blue green amorphous blob of energy. Like it was so astounding. I jumped out of my seat and ran over to try and figure out what it was. Like it was absolutely mind blowing watching that constellation come up over the horizon on a crystal clear night in the middle of the night, like new moon, dark sky.
Yeah, well, look, there are so many different stories about them coming here and bringing wisdom and knowledge. And I think my understanding from what the elders have told me was that the Pleiadians brought to us wisdom and knowledge, and this is the part that people miss a lot, that we gave them wisdom and knowledge too. I think this is something that gets lost a bit when we talk about the Pleiadians and well, the Syrians not so much, because they firstly came to mine gold and basically fiddled with our genes to make us more compliant. But I've got a suspicion that's the clue. I think the Pleiadians came here for a very specific reason and had a long-term plan. And I'm not so sure that the others did. I think the others came for much sort of like more selfish reasons to an extent, mining gold and things like that. The Pleiadians came here, I believe, to create something, and I'll use a Gnostic, I think it's the apocalypse of Adam, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, where Adam said to Eve Adam said to Seth that Eve taught me that we could be greater than the gods that created us. And our understanding was that that blue ball of energy you were looking at was very enlightened, but there are things on this planet and skills we had and knowledge we had that they wanted to learn from, and that's why they came here. It was a two-way expedition and a two-way sharing of wisdom and knowledge, and what I think they were hoping to create, because I believe from what I've been told, this planet is unusual and special in so many ways. I've been told there's very few planets anywhere that grow trees. But we do. And of course, what do we do to the trees? That's a different story. But I believe that the Pleiadians and the people from this planet are integrally linked from the beginning. We have been told a story, a dreaming story, about the Pleiadians sending a spear. Remember that one, Evan?
Yeah.
And we've got a rock that represents this, yeah. And that spear was coated with amoeba germs and all the things that make life. And it was thrown, that's the way they put it, from the Pleiades and landed in Australia at a place called Uluru, which some people know as Ayers Rock. And if you look at Ayers Rock, it's got a cap on the top, then it goes down about 3 miles like a straight spear to a point. And that was the seeding of life. And they were part of that. And then when life evolved to a stage where they could become part of us, they came. So we sort of feel like the Pleiades has been part of the Earth since the very beginning, because they're a far older race than us, and they seeded this planet with a long-term goal. And that goal was that, according to the elders, they are coming back. And when they come back, they have a plan for the future, which we've been told. So they have a long-term plan.
What's
They
the
have a
plan?
long-term plan finding a hominid that was their equal, and they have a long-term plan for when they came back and why they came back and what they're going to do.
What's the plan? What are they going to do? Is it going to be like Independence Day style?
No, that's great. That's what they put up to try and scare the crap out of people.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I can tell you some of what's going to take place because we do talk about in our talks now, and we're given the right to do so by the elders. About a year and a half ago, an elder of old way, because a lot of our elders have lost the old ways, rang me and told me about the fact that the Pleiadians were coming. They'd been called and sung, and they were coming back. There was an agreement when they came here, when the time was right, they'd come back to complete what they started. And the story is, I don't know the timing, because the elders have told me it's gone from 1 to 5 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, sometime within 1 to 5.
Yeah, within 1 to 5 years when we were told. The Art of Martha said 1.5 turns. Others have said different amounts. I don't think it's really that important, the timing, but what they told me was going to happen was that they were going to come back to Australia because that's where they started the whole expedition and when they started with the hominins. And they were going to, one elder said hover and another elder said land on Uluru. And what they were going to do, according to them, was they were going to take in, how can I put this? They were going to take in the vibration, the positive vibrations of a certain number of people. In fact, I've even been told the exact number of people that are on this continent. And if they're aware and enlightened, if the number is enough, they take all of that energy from the whole of this continent, they vibrate it and then magnify it and then throw it into Uluru, which is an incredibly sacred site that lives on a sacred line. That will then go to 4 other sites in Australia, like in lines across to them, activate those sites, and then it goes throughout the world. What then happens is this. If you gentlemen will be aware of the Schumann resonance and the fact that quite recently the Earth has peaked massively and gone up to very high vibrations, I am told it will stay. I know it's gone up to 140, 150. It'll stay on that vibration forever. And what will then happen, according to the elders, there will be 2 realities on this planet.
Oh, God. It seems like that started.
There's
almost,
going to be the one for the baser people, like the generals and the CEOs and virtually anyone that works for Monsanto and Bayer and things like that. All of those people who are not evolved will stay at the lower vibration, and then the ones who have evolved stay at the higher vibration. And then to finish this story very quickly, I remember asking the elders, well, then what happens? You cannot have a place that has 2 realities at the same time. He said, most definitely not. One dies and withers, and it's the lower vibration. I said, well, what happens to the people in that vibration? He said, they die and wither with it. And I thought, oh, okay. And I said, and then they come back later and they reincarnate, don't they? And he said, no. This is the interesting part of this story. He said, at the end, when that vibration disappears on this planet, so too do they, and so too does their soul.
Wow.
It becomes
no more reincarnation.
This is the line in the sand that we're coming up to right now. And the explanation was everyone here has been incarnated so many times, and because they're still here, they've made mistakes. None of us are perfect. That's why we keep coming back. And they've lowered the bar this time. They don't want perfection. It's much lower than it's ever been before. And they figure if you can't get to that lower bar this time, you never will.
Wow.
So it's very important things that you guys are doing right now. The sort of things you guys are doing are trying to elevate people's vibrations so they see the true purpose and the truth. And if you do that, then you will be able to cope with the higher vibrations that are taking place. You will exist in that higher vibration and you stay here. The ones that don't not just disappear from here, they disappear completely. And I remember at the time saying to the elder, you sure that's the case? He said, no, it is the case. We've all had so many chances and we've got it wrong. We have to get it right this time. So and here's the trick. If there isn't enough people of a higher vibration, when that ship comes, they will just move on. Because they can't interfere. What they can do is amplify and take what we give them. But if we don't give them enough, there's nothing they can do to energize that first Uluru and all the other places. So it really is up to us, and we're running out of time.
Do you have a secret handshake or a secret symbol or something so we can tell it's not a fake invasion by the CIA or something like that?
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Clint.
Yeah,
I was just wondering if that number you were mentioning would possibly be 144,000.
Oh, man, he's good, isn't he? Yeah. It is actually. I remember when the elder told me the first time, I said, man, have you been reading the Old Testament? Get your head out of that book. He said, it's got nothing to do with that book. He said, that book's to do with the dreaming. It is 100. I cannot believe that. It is 144,000. I remember laughing at the time. That's not bad, is it? They're very good, mate. It is 144,000.
Great on. Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, well, you were right too. So we've got 25 million in Australia, roughly. We need 144,000 people with strong souls that don't get taken in by what takes place, because the world, what's happened is that they know. The ones who are against this, whether it's reptilian, draconian, or just a bent Homo sapien, I don't care. It doesn't matter which group I'm talking about that's incarnated into a sapient body. They know this too. And their job is simple. They've got to keep people fearful and ignorant so there aren't enough people to actually feed into what the Pleiadians want to do. So it's really a battle between two groups at the moment. So if there's more warfare and there's more fear taking place on this planet, where everyone's petrified of terrorism and becomes defensive and doesn't become enlightened, then they're winning the battle. So it's important that people like yourselves keep people in that enlightened path. And yes, it's 144,000 in Australia that's needed. But if we can't get that number there, then my understanding is they just think, well, there's not enough there to work with. We can't put it into the rock. And therefore, that whole scenario disappears, and we're stuck with the people we've got at the moment and what they're doing. And that will kill them.
Being that we're all antennas in a way, I believe that we actually vitalize the Earth. We can bring up that frequency, but if everybody's negative, it'll bring down the whole Earth's frequency as well. The more positive people on the planet, I think, will bring up the whole Earth's frequency, where others are trying to get the Earth into a negative state and bring everybody down into that fear state.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that about 0.5%, do you think? Have you guys done the percentage calculation? I think it's about 0.5%.
I think it is about that. And to be honest, I think at the moment, they're going to have to try harder. I believe we've got that many people. We live in an area here which is called, it's called basically where all the hippies live, and there's about 250,000 people living in here, and half of them are living that lifestyle anyway. Yeah, we've got other places in Australia like that. At the moment, I'm confident we have the numbers. They're going to have to make more war and more fear to drag those numbers down. There are quite a few people here, and I'm sure the same takes place in America and in Europe and other places. They have an uphill battle trying to drag us down. There are enough people aware, and I feel like there are more people becoming aware. And I think there's a lot of people now that despair with the governments and with the organisations and think they're all untrustworthy. And their only problem is they can't see an alternative, and they've put up with it. If they could see this alternative, they'd also would join us. So I believe there are a lot of people, and I believe the job that you've got and we've got is to drag as many people off the fence we can in the time that's left, to bring them over to the right side, to realise this planet is basically unique in the cosmos, and we have a role to play here, which is why we've had so many beings from so many different other places come here and become part of this, because they're aware of the fact that what we do impacts on them. We have an incredibly important role to make, and it's not to make money, and it's not to store things, and it's not to make war. It's something far more enlightened.
Clint, what do you think about that?
Off their TVs.
Yeah. Do you think we're close, Clint? What do you think from your perspective?
Do I think we're close?
Yeah. Like, do you agree with them on that?
Well, when it comes to people and trying to talk with them about all this stuff, like I said, even on a Facebook post there, I mean, there's some people that are open and they will listen, and there's others that just bury their head in that sand. You can have all the evidence to whatever you want for them right in front of their face, and they're not going to look at it. They don't want to change their paradigm. They don't want to change, and they're just not ready. I've noticed a lot of other people waking up through the years, absolutely, and it is looking positive, but, you know, you're kind of frustrated with others that just, I don't know. Know what I mean?
It's because the evidence is important, but sometimes when they're not ready, it doesn't matter what evidence you have.
It does not matter at all.
But
it really doesn't.
Do you know what, gentlemen? It may well be that there could be some evidence that is going to break through, isn't there, Evan? It may well be there's a piece of evidence we're playing around with right now that may actually break into mainstream consciousness, and it may even break into mainstream media.
That would be a good thing, because so many are watching that mainstream stuff still, right?
Yeah. That's where we've got to get into, Clint. We've got to try and see if we can get in there. And that will be to do with the fact that we have one of these skulls with us. We dug up one and we know of another one. And only 2 other people in the world know where it is, of what we believe are Pleiadians. And it's interesting because the skull that we have, it's been looked at by 2 experts, and I've got to be so freaking careful how I talk about these guys because I don't want mainstream to know who they are. One of those people was rebuilding the skull completely because we had about 9 pieces of it. And his comment was, it's unlike anything. And this guy's one of the top experts in the world. It is unlike anything that he's ever seen anywhere. We also have an archaeologist who's really highly qualified that I'm getting in contact with as soon as I get the 3D model of the skull back, which I'll have in 3 or 4 days, where he said himself, unprompted to us, this is not a Homo sapien. I said, hang on for a sec, only Homo sapiens ever come to Australia. That's what your book says. And he agreed. He said, yes, you're right, and obviously we're wrong. Now, what I know about that being is that I'm of the opinion, and Evan is too, and everyone who's seen it's of the same opinion, it's not even a hominin, but it's got a larger brain capacity than us. But unlike a hominin, when you get to the eyes, the skull doesn't go forward, but goes backwards. It goes backwards at 180 degrees and slopes back. It goes back 17, 18 centimetres and goes back in a rectangle, maybe 12. And that being doesn't have sutures. Now, all hominins have sutures.
It doesn't have any at all?
No, we've seen 2 of them with none. Now, the reason that's important, and you obviously know why, Clint, because you've just sort of checked that a bit further, is for those that don't know, when you're a baby, your 3 sutures don't join up, and that's why you don't touch the top. That is why Lucy, which had about 500 cc, and we've got 1,300, that's why brains can grow inside our head, because our skull is not fused when we're born. Therefore, there's give and take. All monkeys, all apes have a sagittal keel, so their brain never gets bigger. And strangely enough, we're supposed to be related. There's a problem there, but we won't go down that path.
Yeah.
What about pigs? What do their brains look like?
It's a major problem, gentlemen, by the way. It's a stupid problem. They should just address and say, oh, God, it's not there. But anyway, the point with this being is it's got things about it where the guy that did the skull reconstruction, I can tell you he works for Hollywood sometimes doing stuff like this, doesn't he, Evan? He's been doing this the whole of his life. He just looked at it and said, this is just not like anything I've ever seen before. And the fact that, like, if you think about our brain, 90% of it is above your eyes. It goes up this way. For this being, 3% of it's above the eyes and all of it's below. And it slopes backwards from there. It doesn't just stay at the level of the eyes, it goes back lower. If you think about the neck this being's got, it's not like ours. It's got so many things about it that don't fit into mainstream here. And I'll
Also
share one of them. Sorry?
The large eye sockets too, right?
Oh, massive eye sockets. Yeah. The biggest that's ever been seen. And they said that to me too. But it's not even the eye sockets that take up, basically, when you take away the forehead that's not there, The eye sockets make up over 50% of the whole face. That's not even the most amazing part. For me, the most amazing part of the 3 different beings we know of is the first one, which was buried, and we got a hold of both the femur and the humerus. Now, the humerus is the bone that goes from the shoulder to the elbow. Now, that bone breaks every rule, and that's why the Australian government have closed the site down and threatened to put us in jail twice, and I'm answering one of those letters today, aren't I? They want to put me in jail because of this site. What it is...
It's too brittle, isn't it?
Well, it's so brittle, but it's too long. Our humerus is 30. This one goes to 43, but we didn't get to the elbow joint. So I don't know how long it goes, but it's got to at least be 45, and ours is normally 30. Gibbons is 35. Maybe your biggest basketballers will be 33, 34, but not 45, not 50. And as Clint just said, the problem is it is the largest humerus on the planet and the thinnest. It's only 1 centimetre. When I picked the bone up, we all said the same thing. It's so long but so thin, and I measured it, 1 centimetre. You can't put ligaments and muscles on that thing that will work in this gravity.
How about in water?
It wouldn't work in this gravity. And then you've got eye sockets that are so damn big that if you went outside, man, you go blind. They're too big. They're for animals that are nocturnal. Now, if I think about space and lower gravity and virtually no light, that being fits perfectly. If I think about it, this planet with the gravity we've got and the fact that this being has an arm that doesn't work and eyes that don't work during the day, it doesn't belong here. And then I look at the fact... Yeah?
Sorry, keep going. Sorry.
No, you're right.
I was just wondering if that model would work in water better, being, buoyancy and all that, and I wonder.
Well, it's definitely a thought, and yes, it would work better. It would work much better in water. That's why people who've got problems with their spines and stuff swim, don't they? Because the gravity is less. That's a valid point, because one thing we've worked out is we can't put a hairline on it. It's got no hair because the hair is up above your eyes, so to speak. You can't have, what's the point having hair below your eyes? It doesn't work. It's quite possible. It could be that. The problem we've got is we have 1 day on this site, and since that day, a government have closed the site down and want to put someone in jail for it. They're doing everything they can to close it up. It was quite funny because we went with a group of 10 people I'd never met before, and they even sent letters to threatening to put him in jail of people that just stood there. I only had 2 other people that worked with me. The other 7 did nothing. They threatened to put them in jail too. They sent them letters. They really have. And I just got my second letter about this about a week ago, and I'm going to send back again because I can cover myself.
What are they saying? What's the reasoning?
Well, what they want is they're giving me 2 options. I think it's 6 months in jail and $250,000 fine, or 3 years in jail and $750,000 fine, or both. Why they're saying it is because they said I desecrated the site and that I went there illegally. I was invited on by a group of people and invited on by the farmer that owned the land. And what we did was we looked at the 2 skulls that were already exposed, looked at them for the day, and at the end of the day put them back and buried them. And that was desecrating the site. I can tell you that these 2 skulls originally, and skeletons, they're complete. I'd love to see all of them, were buried so their arms were crossed across their chest and their knees were brought up there when they both faced the east.
Very
when we got to them, and when we got to them, there were bones, leg bones and arm bones thrown everywhere, teeth all over the place. And the farmer actually went to the government. The government got these 2 skeletons, took them out, kept them for 6 months, came back and said, nothing to see here. And then the next day, people came and told them if they let anyone on, then they'll put him in jail. And I'm thinking, well, if there's nothing to see there, why do you threaten the farmer with jail if you let anyone see it? And for 2 years, he didn't do a thing. He covered it up. He just thought, I don't want to go through this. And all credit to him, he knew when he looked at that skull that slopes back like that it doesn't make sense. And it took a long wait story, but we got on site. And we've got a film of it, and we've written about 5 articles on it. And I can tell you that particular skull, the one that recedes backwards, it's not a hominid, and it's not a Homo sapien. And the interesting part was there was another skull buried alongside it, and it had a skull thickness of 13 mils, which is incredibly thick, even by comparison to anyone else that's ever been on this planet. Whereas the one with the receding no forehead, we call them no foreheads, it was 6. What was interesting with that one is there is absolutely no doubt that one has no sutures at all. So we've seen 3 without sutures and 1 with sutures, and we just know that we've never seen a site before where you would have 2 beings that are so different from one another, buried, given the same ceremony, right next to one another. They'll bury 1 meter apart, yet they've got nothing in common with each other.
Do you guys
think it was them who actually... Sorry, Darren, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Clint.
Well, I was just getting into the stones here. I'm wondering if they think that it was them that carved the stones, or if it was the original people that carved the stones, or if they were taught by them to carve the stones.
Very good question. I can't answer that.
Well, let's describe the stones a bit first for everybody.
Yeah, that'd be great, for sure.
Yeah, we've got about 150 stones, and I want to make the point, we have never taken any of them off country, not one of them. They've been given to us by people who found them, or most of them were bought on the open market when they were being auctioned, and they shouldn't have been. They're original stones. They were held by original men and women, and some are marked. Most are marked. There's 2 groups. We've got one group which is called, what Uncle Marbuck calls the Star Rocks Collection. We've got about 70 of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got another 70 which is sacred rocks or magic rocks.
And they're just shaped rocks or what? Or are they carved too, like marked with lines?
Well, some of the sacred rocks are marked, but all of the Star Rocks collection are very similar insofar as there's a base rock with a coat that's been melted on top of it, and then lines have been cut into it. And the coat is normally a dark brown to sort of a purple to a black. It's normally a very dark colour, and you have lighter rocks underneath. So when they cut into the coat on the top, you get the lighter rock showing up with marks.
And you think they cut into the coat? Sorry, I better let you just continue with this. I got so many questions on them, but yeah, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, what we can say is we've been told by the elders it's made from chert and resin. Okay. The coat is a combination of chert and resin, and basically to melt the chert, you've got to get a temperature around 1,800 degrees, and it was melted on. We've got one rock which is quite interesting. That's the one that's got the star maps on it. Remember, it's melted twice?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's a really interesting one because it's a sheer coat on every side that was cut. And then what happened is on the top, they melted just the top, and it runs down the side, and you've got a candle wax effect where you've got this bulbous piece that runs all the way along. It's like, you know, when it runs down the side of a candle and it makes a sort of knob where it just sits there. Well, it sat on the side, which meant the side rock wasn't heated.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got evidence here of heat that goes into thousands of degrees. We've got infilling, where they've stuck something in there that's been there for 10,000 years and is still there, which is pretty deadly glue because you won't get that guarantee with any super glue you've got today.
Is that mineral infilling?
Yes. In fact, in one of them, Ros's Rock 1, there's a remnant of metal still inside the infill.
Right. I saw that one, yeah.
Yeah, we've got so many different things and so many different ways they've been cut, but it's a language. And
now, with these lines, you said they're all 33 degrees, and a lot of these stones have 21 lines on them, right?
Yeah.
And if I got it right from the presentation, somebody found a rock in Calgary, Alberta, or was I hearing that wrong?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you got that right. Yep.
Okay, well, that's...
Calgary.
I sent you some pictures of a triangle stone last week sometime there, so that's where it really got me curious on stuff, if some of these stones are out here. But back to the high heat and everything, do you think maybe they coated them, and as it was still hot, somehow they cut the lines in, and why did they do them at 33 degrees?
Right. Well, that's dead spot on. That's exactly right. That's what we believe happened was they melted it on, and then you'll find they're not chiseled. They're just cut lines, and they're very sharp. They're very clean, and they are cut lines that can get down to the size of a hair width. We've got one group on Ross's Rock 1 where the line is so fine and the blade that cut it was so fine and so straight that it was obviously done while it was wet. And then obviously then it dries and hardens, and it really does harden up. And
what is chert composed of?
Silicon.
Pardon?
Silicon.
Okay.
You know, that somebody, I think recently in America, Silicon Valley comes out of that. We believe the information is still stored within it. And like you said, the rock at Calgary, Dr. Derek Cunningham he got one rock and he measured 21 angles. He got 15 out of a rock that Dr. Samir gave us pictures of that came from the Bosnian pyramid. We got a German rock and he measured that one. And together, he measured the rocks in Calgary, Bosnia, and Germany, and I think there were 51 angles he got. And of those 51 angles, 49 of them are on Ross's Rock 1. And that gets back to the story of a universal language. If you have the same angles in Germany, Bosnia, Calgary, and Australia, and it's 51 to 49, and by the way, the two angles that Ross's Rock 1 didn't have are on other rocks. So all of those angles on other countries are either found on one rock in particular or on other ones. That is not a coincidence, gentlemen. That is actually by design, because it's giving information.
So how far back does that go, though? Because if Calgary we were a mile or two under ice during the Younger Dryas, right? Or before the Younger Dryas? Before it. So that's going back 15, 20,000 years. Like, how long were we covered in ice for? I mean, how long does that cycle go back? And then because I feel like this area would have been uninhabited for many, many, many thousands of years, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, I would think you're right. And then when
it was left on the ice.
Yeah, I would think that these angles and these rocks, I know the Blombos rocks are about 75,000 years old, and they are straight lines again, intersecting, and that goes back 75,000 years. And if we measure the angles there, mind you, that's a very soft rock. The rocks we've got are much, much harder by comparison and much more complicated. Okay. But we've got a language in the Blombos rocks of straight lines and intersections. So we can at least take it back to there and say they're still doing the same thing then that they were doing when we've got them. The one we've got was at least, I mean, it was buried and dug out during construction for a house, and they dug it out about 1.25 meters underneath the ground, and it's all sandstone, and this isn't sandstone. It was dropped there around 10,000 to 5 to 10,000 years. But how old it is, well, according to the elders, it's incredibly old. In fact, according to the dreaming story we have with Ross's Rock 1, which is very detailed and given to me by an elder, which was Kano, we've got to go back to when the Pleiadians came here, which I'm looking at around 800 to 900,000 years. So I think you're going to find this language of lines and intersections, which is mathematical, has been around, and I think that's one of the things the Pleiadians gave us. They gave us this language.
The infill for these rocks, do you think, it's a curious thing, I wonder, I know you can tune stones just by chipping away at them, and you can get them at a certain resonance frequency and stuff. I'm wondering if these infills might have been for a kind of a tuning or maybe matching up with other stones for full paragraphs or something, so to say.
It's funny, Clint, because actually that's where I've been working with some other people. What we're working on right now with these rocks is to find the right resonance. We're talking about different numbers like 963 and 936 and others. We're looking at different resonances, and what we're going to try and do is we're going to try to get together and see if we can find someone that can create these different resonances and put them alongside the rocks. Now, the reason we're doing that is because we do believe that this is all sound-based. And we got a clue with this recently. Some time ago, a friend of ours got a Chilean photograph taken, and by accident, he held the rock on one of the photographs, and his aura came out completely differently.
Wow.
Like something going on that changed his yeah, well, it did something. So what we've done is we called this lady in because she said, that's unusual. I've never seen that before. And we got 18 rocks and we held them. We got photographs of them. And what I can tell you is we had photographs of our auras first, the 3 people who did this. What I can tell you is every photograph has a different aura. Every one of them is different. So what we know is, I know these rocks, what they actually do, they work symbiotically. Nearly all of them work. You can put rods and crystals over these rocks untouched and nothing happens. As soon as you put it in your hand, they go. They work together. And they work Sorry?
Do they affect compasses or anything like that?
Well...
Have you tried a compass or magnets or Geiger counter?
Yeah, we've done a few of those, and I can tell you some we've done now. We did a talk in Adelaide when our elder came in, and I believe he passed on, he energised the rocks. And what were the machines we had? What were they called? We had 3 of them.
They were measuring electromagnetic.
Yeah, they were measuring electromagnetic force, and I can tell you that we had one guy that put his hand over one rock, watched it shake. There was lightning coming out, or bolts of energy coming out, and all of the 3 machines on this day, the needle was hitting the far edge and couldn't go further. Wow. And some of the rocks that were going over were rocks we thought were just insignificant. We didn't. They didn't look that great, did they?
They were often really small.
Yeah, but they were going off the planet. So we've seen that. We've also done
Was it on a special day when you were doing those measurements, or just any old day? Was it on solstice or anything?
I believe it was the day where these rocks were turned on by our elder, who just passed on in spirit form and came.
Okay, I understand. Yeah.
We had elders who told me he's with us, he's here.
Okay.
And I actually asked, at the very start, I actually, when the elders were there, because we had quite a few rocks, and I told them, I said, I'm getting nowhere with the rocks. I really am not. And I asked the elders on that day, and there was quite a few there, I said, I need elders to hold these rocks, because I've been given rules. Even my son can't touch the rocks. I'm the only person who can. And if they do, they die. And we know that's happened, don't we?
Yes.
Anyway.
So I'm not touching.
Yeah. So what I did is I asked for permission, and the elders got together and said, no, you can't have it. And I said, but you asked me to find out what the rock's about, and I can't do it. And then it was funny. One of the elders then got up later and said, I've just been told by Kano it can be held, and it can be held by anyone for the next 3 hours. And that was the time when the rocks were turned on and where the energy was just pumping out everywhere. We do an experiment today with our talks where what we do... Well, we've done it a few times. I don't know if it's been filmed.
I think it has.
The dowsing rods were filmed on one presentation.
Yeah, we have. Okay. We've done it a lot of times since, and we've added something to it. What we do is we get people with dowsing rods to actually use them, and they cross and they do all that stuff. But I was always aware of the fact that people would say, well, you can see the rocks and therefore you make them close when they get there. So we've added to it recently where we actually blindfold someone, and then I run off and I point them in a certain direction, and Evan just pushes the person towards where I am. And on every occasion, the rocks turn over when we get just in that line. So what we're trying to do is show them that these rocks actually do have some sort of energy. Now, my problem is...
With the energy that does come out of them, it's a straight energy. It moves in a straight line. I'm wondering how wide of a span that energy is.
It doesn't work in a wave. It works in a straight beam. I've actually gone out into a street, and with a guy that's got dowsing rods, he's gone 150 metres down the street, and we've both pointed it, and it only turns when he's 150 metres away for just about 10 centimetres, and then it doesn't again. So it is a beam. Yeah, it comes out as a beam.
It's in a wave.
No waves. No. No, the silcons they're sharp, they come out in one point and they never deviate. They go in one direction only. And we've done this now. We're at the stage now where we're trying to work out. See, I know how they work because of the 7 silcons we've got. One of them, I mean, those things that I'm talking about, I call them party tricks, really, because they don't do much, but one does work for me. And I can tell you how it actually works because on both occasions I threw the rock away because I didn't know what would happen when the energy come out. I didn't know where it was going to go and what it could do. And what actually happens is the one that works for me, which is quite nondescript again, it's not one of the pretty ones. I held it in my hand, and it's the only one that will do this. When I put it in my hand, it sits, the back base part sits on the base at the back of my hand. I could feel my heartbeat. And then all of a sudden, that heartbeat transferred into the rock, and it would go forward and backward, forward and backward, and get quicker and stronger and much more powerful than what was there. And in the end, my hand was shaking with the movement of it going backwards and forwards, and I could see it was about to explode outwards, and I just threw the rock on the ground twice.
Did it
and I've never done it
actual? Did it speed up your actual heart as that was happening too, or did the rock just speed up?
No, it was taking my energy, and then
amplifying.
It didn't change the heartbeat, but it became so strong I couldn't even feel mine, and it was shaking my hand. And I thought, oh man, this is getting freaky. And I thought, well, what happens when it shoots out? Where's it going to go? I thought, no. And I've done it twice. I just throw it on the ground. And I've never done that again with that one, because to do that, that one will work for me. And I just sense that energy that's coming out, not so much for the other ones where I do the party tricks. I don't get the heartbeat and stuff like that. It still works for you, but that one works properly. And that could be, I believe that if I could work it properly, I could probably lift up 10-ton rocks and all sorts of weird things.
Yes.
Guy from that Coral Castle did. Yeah, because he had cone rocks too.
Edward Leeds-Scanlon, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't think Edward Leeds-Scanlon was working with a lot of that, but that's a whole different story. But yes.
Yeah. Same sort of thing.
Well, he did go into that in his books, and I do believe he absolutely knew about it. I'm just not sure if he utilized that in his methods of putting together rock date. But yeah, absolutely, I agree with what you're saying fully. It's great.
Well, it's interesting that it amplifies the heart, because what didn't you guys say in one of your presentations of the reason why they're interested is well, no, not the heart, but the energy from the heart is because of they're interested in because of our emotion and our love, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking earlier when they came down. Is that what they learned from us? Was the emotions? Is that what we shared with them? Was our emotions and all that?
Can I tell you a story that fills that up really well for you? Because that's spot on. It was given to me by Uncle Marbuck before he passed on, and he was a very powerful elder, one of the strong ones that had a lot of wisdom and knew a lot about the rocks, more than I ever did. He gave me a 4-hour talk on them. I don't remember any of it. It just went on for hours. He knew them back to front. And he told me a story about exactly what you just said. Because I said to him at one stage, I said, look, I don't doubt the Pleiadians came and others came. I said, but I just don't see why. I look around today and all we want to do is hurt each other. We pollute the place. We create so much mess. What have we got that they don't have? And I said, I can't see why they came. And he said to me this, I still remember this. He said, I want you to think about this. He said, I want you to go back to the first alien that was presented in fictional TV, film, whatever, in a positive way. And he said, you'll find that, by the way, do you know who that would be? He was the first alien. Sorry?
Well, we can go with ALF, alien life form, or we could go with... There's a movie there with a cute little alien. I can't remember what that one was called.
No, you got to go back further.
No, well, E.T.'s one, yeah. That's probably the one he's talking about.
Flight of the Navigators.
He's scared of the greys, so I wouldn't take that one. Go back further. It's science fiction. It comes from America. Gene Roddenberry was the one who came up with the idea, and he said that when he came up with this being, it was given to him. And his name is
that the robot? Doctor Who?
Dr. Spock.
Dr. Spock.
It's Dr. Spock from Star Trek.
You know what? I was just in fucking Vulcan yesterday. Star Trek capital of Canada.
There you go. Well, this is what he said to me. He said, I want you to think of the Pleiadians as being like Dr. Spock. He said, Dr. Spock is rational. He likes the humans. He understands what is good and what isn't and always sticks by it. But the one thing he could never understand, what Clint said, is he couldn't understand our emotions. He couldn't understand love. He couldn't understand jealousy, the things that we have, particularly one emotion, which is love. That's the part he came to learn about. And that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is why the Pleiadians came here. Because humans will lay down their life for another being. They can, when they're in love with someone, can do the most amazing things of self-sacrifice and really can. And as I've been told many times, the most powerful emotion in the cosmos is love. Not hate, not vendettas, but love. He said to me that what we have, that what we can contact is we can contact that emotion stronger than any other being there is. And that's what they came to us to learn about love and about how we can actually love someone in a way that they can't do, but they want to because they know it's such a powerful emotion. So that's what they're here for, ladies and gentlemen. And they aren't here to watch us kill ourselves and hurt ourselves because that's not what they know about that. Yeah. They got that one back to front. They know what that's about. And they've got draconians others to deal with, and they fully get where that's coming from. That's what they come here for. They believe this planet, the whole of this planet, and I'm talking about the planet itself, radiates pure love. We've got one rock, only one rock, that is purely good. It has no evil in it, and no original person who had bad intent has ever touched this rock. And we've actually cured people with cancer from this rock, where spirits have basically been thrown out of his body and landed on another guy that screamed, "Get off me, get off me." Remember that?
He was just having an afternoon nap.
He was having an afternoon nap. When it went out of this person, it went into him. But that rock is pure love, and it may well be it's a Pleiadian rock. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that we put the love in there. That's what they come for, that particular emotion. Not the others, the opposites, which all the other opposite emotions we've got, they know about them. But this is the one that comes from this planet. And when it runs at 150, everyone that lives and gets to the other dimension, the higher dimension, will be driven by pure love as its primary emotion. There'll be nothing else that can get in front of it. And when you have that love, then there's no ego. And when you have just pure love, then the telepathy, the disappearing, all the things that humans could do before, it comes back into being again. So that's what they're coming for. And that's why they're coming back again.
When you said they actually came and landed, does that lead into that crystal ship that you were talking about in one of the presentations, and this crystal ship actually exploded?
Oh, that one, that was early.
Do you recall that?
Yeah, I do, and that was much earlier.
You know what really made me start thinking about that is there's a guy named David Hamill. He's from Ontario, and he was working on these UFO ships. He actually had some guys come down, and I do believe they said they were from a planet called Archon or something. But the ship design that they gave him was with granite pins, and a lot of it was stones because of the heat, etc., etc., etc. I found it very interesting to hear about a crystal ship coming down and exploding, because we can also look around Peru and stuff, and we see a lot of weird stuff that is upside down and all around. And I mean, was there such a thing as stone ships in the day? I think possibly there was, and in a way it makes sense. When you guys mentioned the crystal ship, it intrigued me.
Yeah, the crystal ship crashed near a place called Carrion. Our understanding is that it was shot down. We're told by reptilians, but I mean, I'm not going to go down that path too far because we do a bit anyway. Yeah. And the Carrion glyphs, which are about 2 Ks from where the ship is supposed to have crashed, the mothership. And on the Carrion glyphs, there are about 8 UFO icons there. It's the most common one there. 3 are facing the wrong way, like plummeting down, and 5 are facing the right way and landing. We believe, and Arnie Bev Spears, who was the last Darking Young Elder and the last full descent Darking Young Elder, who told us about the Star People coming, we believe that's where the ship crashed. There are stories about that crystal ship through the whole of New South Wales. It even goes up to Dungutty land, doesn't it? Uncle Reuben Kelly spoke about a ship made of energy that turned to crystal, then was exploded and landed.
It was made of what? Sorry?
Sorry?
It was made of what?
It was made of energy, and when it came to the Earth, landed in the Earth, it turned into crystal form.
Okay.
And when it turned into crystal form, it was shot down and exploded. And then basically what you've got there is a narrative about them coming here and sharing information, but their problem was they lost a lot of technology in the mothership. The escape pods were far less sort of sophisticated what they carried with them. So it took a period of time. So yeah, that's a story that's very common to the Darkinjong people, the Dungutty people, of the people around Carryong that all knew about that story. As you go further out, they know the story about, they talk about some fire coming through in the crash that took place, but don't know as much about it because they're a bit further away from where it actually happened. But that's a story that's part of that Pleiadian heritage. I don't know whether that ship was Pleiadian or not. Okay. I suspect it's a different story because the Seven Sisters came and there was no issue there except Orion chasing them. There's no issue there about crashing. They landed here comfortably. So that's got to be a different event. This one could have, I don't know the date on this one either because it's too hard to say, but it is old.
Okay, sticking with the crystal, you did mention about a crystal skull that would not shut up. I am curious about that and how the information is accessed. Is it through light? Do they shine light through the crystal skull? And where was this crystal skull found? You didn't touch much on it in the one presentation, but you did mention it.
The crystal skull.
You said it was a crystal skull.
Yeah, it's a fantastic piece of anatomy insofar as it's even got the 28 teeth. It's got the suture lines of the skull. It's really sophisticated. We've seen it twice, I think, Evan, haven't we?
This does not sound carved then, does it?
No, it's really sophisticated.
It was formed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a child's crystal. It has 28 teeth, not 32. It doesn't have the wisdom teeth, and I've been told by the person who mines it or looks after it, it is a child's crystal. I've got to be honest about this. When we first heard about this, I didn't want to touch it because there's been so much negative stuff about crystal skulls and it was made and stuff like this, and we really didn't have a lot of interest in it, and we thought that if we went near it, it would get in the way of the science. Mm-hmm. So we went into this looking like, okay, we'll check it out, but we'll go and see it. And we went up there. And we went and met them in a park the first time, didn't we? Yep. And it was interesting because at one stage, Evan was going to take a picture of it. And she had 3 guards with her, 3 men. And one of them got up and got very belligerent and wanted to actually take Evan out. And she said, no, I gave him permission to take a picture. And that made me wonder a bit. It made me think, if you want to make a lot of money out of this and you're trying to make a big, get a lot of cred, why would you stop us taking pictures of it?
Right.
So I thought at the time, interesting. And then what also happened was that she gave me the crystal to hold for a while. And the first time ever, when I gave it back to her, there was a piece of crystal laying on the ground. And she said, well, she gave that to you. And I've actually got it just behind me. I've still got that piece of crystal. But
excellent. And that wasn't off the skull? It just appeared?
No, it was off the bottom of the skull. It came off.
Wow. Okay.
And I've got it sitting in sitting on a plate right now with some other sacred stuff.
It is said if a crystal breaks, it is meant to share with someone. It wants to.
Yeah, well, it was. It's just a shard. It's not that big. But I got to tell you that even when I came away then, I still wasn't quite prepared to write an article about it because I still wasn't fully convinced. So we went a second time. And on the second time, they showed, you were there for that one, weren't you, the video?
No,
you weren't.
No.
I went with someone else.
You did. Yes.
I went the second time, I went to a house and they actually videoed what took place. Now, what they were told was they were told to go to the Gympie Pyramid, and they were told to go on a certain day. And a week before, one of the people involved was called to America because the son was crook. Obviously, she wasn't meant to go. So they went up there, but they weren't told what for. They were told to go there. They knew nothing about crystal skulls or anything. So they went there, and I actually have a film. I watched the film because they decided they're going to film it because they knew something important was going to happen. And so there they are walking up the Gympie Pyramid, walking along, and they get to this plateau. And in front of it, I heard her say, "We've got to stop here." And one of the guys said, "Why?" "No, I don't know. We just got to stop here." So then she does. She stops there. And then she's looking around there, and it's been raining a bit there. And she goes over to this red rock and picks it up and said, "This is it. This is what we've been asked to come and get." I'm going to tell you, guys, if I was walking up there and I saw that red rock, it was a crappy looking red rock and it just didn't have any shape in it. There was no marks on it, nothing special. I would have walked past it. But she said, "No, we've got to get this rock." So she picks this rock up, and because it's wet, they start pulling away the clay. And underneath it, there is the crystal skull. And I heard the reaction of the people as they did it. And I thought to myself, man, what, did you went up there before, the day before, and then cover it all up and put it in there? I doubt it very much. And then I was told some women had taken that particular skull from the Olgas, which is near Uluru, and placed it a long, long time ago on the Gympie Pyramid. So when I saw it being discovered, that's when we put an article up, because I met these people a couple of times, and here's the interesting part. It started to talk to her and talk to her and talk to her and wouldn't stop talking to her. And it started, she couldn't sleep. She started to basically go insane. So what she's done...
Is this telepathic talking?
Yes. Yeah, not, but just in her head all the time, telling the stories about what the skull's about and what it means, and it's for the children and stuff like that. And it's for the change that's coming. It's to keep the children that are what you call crystal children and stuff like that, to make sure they can keep that going, all that sort of stuff. Telling her this, but it was going on all the time. And she found the only way that she could stop this, what was it, Evan? Was to smoke and drink Coke.
Yeah.
And all she would do is from that point on, because it deadens it.
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen, that tells me a lot about Coca-Cola here. It actually deadens the spirit. And she actually constantly does that. And what it does is it gives her a break. But it wasn't enough. She then rammed blue stuff into the eyes and into the sutures to shut it up.
Wow.
And found... Oh, yeah, I'm not that wrapped about that part of it. Yeah, because when you get pictures of it, you'll see all the blue that's been put in there. It was put in the eyes because it's coming out through the eyes and through the sutures to quieten it up, to make sure that it wouldn't speak as much. And now what she has, it has an arrangement where it speaks for 2 hours each day to her, and then the rest of the time leaves her alone.
You know, I know of some psychics, the same idea. They got so much stuff coming into their brains that they end up abusing drugs and alcohol just to get it all out of there.
Yeah.
So, makes sense.
Well, this case it was smokes and Coca-Cola, but it's the same technique.
Yeah, it is. It's the same.
To this day, I don't know. I think, is she dead or not?
No, she's
not sure.
No, she's on Facebook.
Oh, she?
I talked to her on Facebook. Yeah.
How big is this skull, Stephen?
It'd be basically the size of a child. It'd be actually proportionate.
A child.
It's supposed to be to protect. This is what both of the women have told me, because they've fought with each other. The other woman's rung me up and tried to tell me it belongs to her, not the other one. I said, well, this doesn't make sense to me, because the skull called you and told you to be there on a certain day, and you were called to America, and they said they should have waited. No, if you're called on a certain day by a spirit, man, you don't take a rain check on it, so I'll be back later. It
doesn't work that way.
I said, I can't see that. And in the end, I had to tell her to stop ringing me because it was getting quite vindictive. Everyone in Gympie knows this woman's got this particular skull. I believe it's supposed to have been found by her to facilitate the change that's taking place so the younger ones stay strong. But
Okay.
she herself, I don't think it's doing her any good. I think it's really hurting her. I think it's a dangerous piece of work to have long time. And I do believe it does have a power.
As it is with a lot of these
If
things,
it was that dangerous,
Yeah.
that dangerous to her, it's kind of wild that she was led to it, because usually it doesn't work that way. You're only led to something if you're ready for it. So.
Yeah, well, I think the problem is that there's been a lot of fighting between the two women who were both called. And I don't think that this is a good environment to place the skull in, because there's a lot of animosity, and they've come round and knocked on the door and said, I'm going to get you, and there's been threats made. And she's got involved in the fight too, because when we turned up the first time, there were 3 guys there acting as guards to find out what we were like. Wow. So there's an aura and an atmosphere there of contention and of I should have it and you shouldn't have it. And I don't know that's really the right place for that skull to be. But at the moment, that's where it is. And we haven't been back because it is. I mean, I'm prepared to admit, and I have done some shows on it, not many, because we don't get a chance to do it much. I'm prepared to admit that I believe it's legit. I believe it's legit. And I didn't think I was going to say that. And I'm saying that as a skeptic. I went there as a full-on skeptic, but I saw the film of them finding it and the way it was found, and, oh, shit, what's this, and stuff like that. Man, they're either bloody good actors that should go to Hollywood, man, because they were doing such a great job of this find. If they made it up and did the whole thing, they really were shocked about what they found.
Just how detailed it is, it really makes one wonder.
It's the best one I've seen. The best one I've seen.
And when you get into transmutation of materials and stuff.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder.
And the suture lines are exactly as our suture lines are. I mean, they've got every one of them marked in. All of the teeth you can count. You can count each one of them. It's pretty damn good. And, I mean, the other part is they have taken that crystal skull to sacred sites in Australia. I know that for a fact. Never given a talk. Never charged money for it. And no one's ever seen it. Now, if you're going to have a fake and you don't make money out of it and you don't get credit out of it, nobody knows who they are. We're not going to say their name. I know their name. Yeah. My question is, and I put this in the article, if you're not making money and you're not getting fame, why would you make it as a fake? I mean, what are you going to get? You make a fake to get something from it for personal gain, either ego or bank balance. They got neither. When they went around the world, around Australia, looking at these different sites, they flew there and paid for it with their own money. Well, man, when I knew that, I thought, well, God almighty, I mean, and he was so protective of it, wasn't he? He was going to hit you when you took one picture of it. He really was aggro about it. He wanted to protect the whole thing, and they were both protecting her because of this stuff that was going on. When you put all those things into the story, there are human parts of the story, but, you know, if you've got to convince me it's a fake, and I just ran out of reasons of thinking it was one, because everything I saw told me they're not going to gain anything from this, and they still haven't. We've put an article about it. No one else has.
So we only got a few minutes. Sorry, go ahead.
When
Clint.
you were sitting with the skull, did you end up getting any telepathic messages from it or any?
We've got 10 minutes left. Yeah, I got a message from the skull. It nearly killed me.
Okay. Would you mind sharing it, or? Well,
yeah, no, I'll tell you most of it because I've said it. I did say it at our talk at Mullen, didn't I? Mm-hmm. I can't say all of it because what basically happened was I got the skull that was given to me by a professor who gave it to the experts, who gave it back and said, nothing to see here, ladies and gentlemen, walk away. But because this skull was found 65 years ago, legally they can't touch it. Because 65 years ago, Aboriginal people weren't recognised as humans in Australia and they had no legal rights. So whatever you found that was original wasn't protected. We could keep it forever. What happened was I was given the skull, given 2 skulls, but I was given the skull that's even more receding than the one that we saw in the ground. It's worse. It goes back even further. I left it with a gentleman, no drama, for a while because we were flying back and I knew I couldn't fly back through the plains. They'd take it the same way they'll take our rocks if we go through the plains anymore now.
Right.
And then I drove down and took it back. And from the time I got it back, I got progressively sicker and sicker and sicker. I've never been sick in my life. I've never had a headache. I've never been to a doctor, have I?
No.
I've never had the flu, a cold, a runny nose, anything. I've done 65 years non-stop without ever being ill. This was pathetic. I lost 12 kilos of weight, and I only weighed 60 kilos to begin with, and 48, I looked like I came out of bloody Ethiopia. I was I was just skin and bone. My liver stopped working, basically. In fact, I had a Chinese herbalist, the best in our region, who said it's like a wildfire that went through your body and killed every organ bar your heart.
Wow.
I had
hair loss?
a little bit, yeah, a little bit. I've lost a bit more, and I was losing some anyway, so it's no big drama there.
Radiation comes to mind.
Well, the problem I had is that I had coughs that would go for 6 hours straight, and I cough every 10 seconds. That wears you out. I hadn't slept for months. My pancreas wasn't working. My bladder wasn't working properly. I was going to the toilet all the time. Every part of my body was breaking down, shutting down. And I got to the stage where I called in some elders, and I called in the best psychics we know and asked them to help me, because I wasn't going to go to a doctor. And they all gave me the same story. Some had never even seen the damn skull, and they all said exactly the same thing. When you got that skull back, it attacked you. And as one, I think Alison said, it injected a poison into your system that doesn't come from here that should kill you. And they all said this, didn't matter who it was. They all told me the same thing. The skull turned on me. Now, I didn't know where to put it, and I was putting it in the wrong place. And one person told me, you've got to put it in the right place. You've also got to talk to the skull. And then they told me why it attacked me, because I thought, well, why me? Why not the guy that had it before? Why not the professor that had it? Or the woman that had it before? That didn't pick on them. And the reason was, that when it came here a long, long time ago, around about 1 million years ago, and was called by the trees for protection, because the place was being trashed by the reptilians, they say. And it came, and when it got here, their ship was shot down. There's something about those reptilians when a ship turns out. Different story to the other ones, this one. Was shot down, and one being lived. This one. It survived, it escaped. And then, to cut a very long story short, I was in a different form, and I was part of the group that betrayed it. So when it saw me and recognized me for what I was, not what I am now, and turned on me.
Wow.
But I was also told that that was going to make me sick, but they all told me the same thing. It will put you on death's door, and it did. On one occasion, my wife thought I was actually dying, and I did too. But you won't die, and you will recover, and it's a punishment and also a way of cleansing. And what's happened is the time I put it in the right place, gave it ceremony, I slowly started to recover.
Started to it, okay.
Well, in the end, the last two things I had to get rid of, I had both pleurisy and pneumonia at the same time.
Wow.
And that was the last one. It's quite funny, because in the end, I got so desperate because I couldn't get rid of that. I went to a doctor, and the doctor got a chest x-ray done and told me I've got cancer, and it went through half of my body. He said, this is the biggest cancer I've ever seen in my life. And then he said, you're going to have a CAT scan done, but there's nothing that can be done for you, mate, because it is so bloody big. And anyway, I got back the next day and I got good news. I had pleurisy and pneumonia. It was the biggest one they'd ever seen. Most people would think when they've got pleurisy and pneumonia, it's bad news, but I was wrapped. I thought, that's fantastic.
No doubt. Yeah.
I'll have that. And now I'm basically at the stage now, I'm about 90% recovered. But it's taken 6 months, because what I was also told is the spirit in that skull has been deliberately found. It's still there now, and we've found 3 of them, and they're found now because the change is coming. They came 1 million years ago to inaugurate this change, but couldn't do it, and they've waited all of that time for the right time. And it's a good one to finish on. They're here now, and those 3 were found. One we know about was found 2 weeks ago, and apart from 2 other people, we're the only people know where it is roughly, and we're going to see it. We're going to photograph it. We're not going to take it away. We're going to bury it and give it ceremony, but we are going to photograph it and measure it first. That's 3. In original religion, everything happens in threes. And I remember when an elder told me, you're going to find a third one of those, I said, never. And we did.
Right.
We found the three. They've all been found within about a year of each other, and they're all found for the same reason. They were letting us know that A, they're not from here, and B, there's something here that's about to happen. And that's why I think it's a nice one to finish on, because I believe very soon from now, there is a change afoot, and these beings are part of that change. And I can tell you, if you want to ask about their power, my God, they're powerful, because they can kill you if they want to, and they nearly did with me. And I'm still alive today because I gave it ceremony and spoke to it and explained who I am now, because it didn't know. It just saw me. It doesn't see me in a sort of body form. It sees me in a spirit. Yeah, and it saw me from before, recognized my imprint from before, and thought, man, I remember you, right? Hammered me, right? Because it got tortured and killed by the reptilians. They killed it outright. But it sort of remembered me because it befriended me to begin with, and I did with it, and then things changed, and sort of, it's now that it knows that I'm trying to actually facilitate this change and is aware of what we're trying to do, it's fully behind us. And of course, I can tell you something else. As soon as the last scientific experiment is done, we'll be taking it back to where it was dug out 65 years ago, and we're putting it back. And we're going to give it ceremony. So it's going back home as soon as the science is finished. But it needs that science so we can prove to mainstream this is an alien. It came 1 million years ago. If it came 1 million years ago, it can come whenever it wants, and it's coming now.
Yeah.
And that will give people who are sitting on the fence something concrete to hang on to.
Yeah.
I'll say, well, if it is an alien, then maybe the rest of this story is right too. And if he found this alien and is saying this, well, maybe that's not a coincidence. So we sort of feel like that's why it was found now, to get the people that are sitting on the fence, because there's a lot of good people that will not move up this elevation yet, but should, if they just had something to hang on to. We can't give them Jesus on the cross, but what we can give them is 3 aliens, and one we've got with us at the moment that we're going to analyse. We've done the skull, and the man that does this said it's not like anything on the planet. And I've said this many times, if it's not like anything on the planet, as on top, so below. Well, we've done below, can't find it here, you look up there. And that's where we're looking.
How are you guys going to be disseminating this information? Are you doing any conferences coming up, or are you writing more books, or you know?
Yeah, we're doing 2, one in Melbourne in November 17th.
Sorry, what was that? I missed that. I think the connection went weak there. You're doing what?
We're doing one in Melbourne on next month, and we're doing one on the Sunshine Coast next month. But we are writing what we think is our seminal book. It's going to be about 180,000 words, where we're basically doing the whole history of everything we've done. And also we're doing probably 40,000 words will be about the links between the dreaming and Gnosticism. So we're looking at it from a religious point of view, from an archaeological point of view, from an historical point of view. We're going to look at it from every angle and try and piece together all of our research into one book.
Nice.
It's going to be huge, but I feel like that's what we were meant to do to begin with. And we've just actually got to the stage now, we're in the final edit, and I would say we would be probably about 2.5 months away. And I think it's going to be called From the Cradle to the Grave, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to be called. Yeah, From the Cradle to the Grave. So
sounds like a book on pharmaceutical companies.
I like that.
Well, everyone's fucking real glad you're feeling better, Steve.
Oh,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And do you have any more questions, Clint?
No, man. That's it. That's great. That was awesome.
Well, I gotta say,
that was awesome.
This is got to be what, the 10th or 11th or 12th episode that we've come up with that the answer is love. So, I mean, that definitely the answer is love more often than it's anything else. So love is winning.
It is the highest emotion with the most frequency. Absolutely. It's the one that wins out overall.
So all you fucking always Trumpers and never Trumpers and whatever the fuckers, just start getting along, and you're falling in for the reptilian agenda.
Fall for that crap. Yep, exactly.
Hug
It's
a
all meant to confuse.
Hug a Democrat, motherfuckers.
So Stephen and Evan, thanks for coming on, and let us know when the book comes out. We can talk about it on the show, plug it a little bit, maybe have you on for a quick little blurb or something.
That'd be awesome.
Appreciate that. Good on you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. Good questions.
Yeah.
We enjoyed this.
Yeah,
Really good.
that was
It
a
was
blast,
great
man.
talking to
Very
you guys,
informative.
for sure. Thank you.
Enjoy the future,
Pleasure.
gentlemen.
Okay, thanks, guys.
No worries.
For now.
Awesome.
And that was our chat with the Father Son Strong team and the infamous Clint P. Everyone,
I thought he's like Snuffleupagus for a bit there.
who Clint P?
Yeah. We're just getting like, anonymous recommendations and stuff. And yeah, maybe he'll come down to the studio one day and hang out with us. That was
Clint,
great
yeah,
having
we're
him
not
on,
too
yeah.
far along. We might have him on if we end up doing this next show. Clint might come back. Of course, big thanks to Clint for being a listener for about the entire time, just about. And he's probably requested, at least 10 or 12 guests in the background quietly. And,
Yeah.
If I listed them off, you guys would be blown away.
What'd you think of this episode?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to get more into the genetics and the evolution and all that about the Denisovans.
That's
and
because you're a racist. And you wanted ammo for your racist agenda. See, that's what he even says.
That's nice. Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
I was going to throw
I
you
was
in
going to
there.
ask how
when he
how the
started
races
talking
have
about
evolved,
the far right, I was going to say that's Graham.
Oh my God.
Throw you under the bus.
Alt.
Alt-right.
Alt,
Yeah,
not
that's
far.
right. Sorry.
There's a big difference.
There's a huge difference.
Yeah, we're just
Anyhow.
kidding about that too.
Of course we are. Graham is.
I'm alt middle.
He's alt middle. He's alt left of middle. No, alt right of middle. Who knows? Bro jobs help better, Al. Anyway, big shout out to the Strongs. Check out their YouTube channel. We'll put all the links in the show notes. Big shout out to Clint for coming on the show. Big shout out to Graham for being the co-host. Big shout out to Brody for letting us do the show in his spare bedroom. And a big shout out to all you guys for supporting us and helping us along the way. Of course, if you aren't supporting the show now, head over to grimerica.ca/support today and sign up for a monthly of your choosing and get in on the because you want to be one of the group. There's a nice tight knit group of supporters that you could be one of. You could be a 0.00001%er.
Yeah.
All right, motherfuckers. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
I don't know,